Hello everyone. Welcome to another online series by Singapore Computer Society Blockchain Special Interest Group. The first video features Mr. Subra Shankar, digital transformation veteran, entrepreneur and investor, who speak to you today how blockchain enables provenance.
Hello, I'm Subra Shankar. I'm a business transformation specialist with New England Ventures and also a blockchain enthusiast. Today's short video is meant as an introduction to provenance and its use cases of blockchain technology. It is not intended to be a comprehensive study of provenance, its applications, and the challenges in the process. It hopefully will provoke some curiosity in you, make you interested in it, and possibly to consider using it in your provenance business needs. The agenda itself. Give me a second, let me just get my slides going. Is to consider the changing demands of provenance in the global market and how blockchain could be used, and followed by the challenges at a very high level to look at a typical business process flow, and then highlight certain industry-specific uses and finish with some benefits as such. As definition, provenance of a good refers to its origin as well as the chronological record of its ownership, location, the processes it went through, as well as any ingredients added to it and the modifications it went through. The process of adding ingredients and modifications vary widely depending upon the good that is being addressed. The information on provenance of goods can help firms meet customer needs and producer demand for detailed information regarding the origin and ownership of goods, as well as of all materials, components, and ingredients that make up those goods. As to blockchain, I will not get into defining it here, given the nature of the audience of this particular group, except to remind us that a node on blockchain can be any internet-connected electronic device. It could be a server, a computer of any kind, a mobile device, or every single IoT with storage and processing power. Now, even as COVID has redefined the global supply chain landscape, globalization is not going to get wiped off. The movement of commodities or components will continue across the globe, albeit with a near sourcing as a driving factor. Now, as such, the consumer conscience and awareness will only continue to grow. And this will translate into consumer demands for producing products, not only to be of highest quality and safety, but also from sustainable sources and fair labor practices. There have been enough researches on consumer concerns done around the world, especially in large economic powerhouses in the world, not just Europe and the USA, but including Asia, in particular China. And these studies and researchers consistently point to an increase in safety concerns of food and medicine, as well as increase in environmental conscience. The Pew Research pointed out that the consumer priorities on these concerns in China in particular, had increased from 12% in 2008 to 42 in 2016. And I would expect in the post-pandemic world, this would be exceeding about 75. Now we are talking about the world's largest populated country. Now, add to that the regulatory policies that enforce businesses, the government's policies that enforce business to be transparent on the process chain of the products they've gone through. Governments want to eliminate or at least minimize money laundering operations, unfair labor practices, and any passing through of civil war where exploitations may be high. All of these are driving business willingness to embrace transparency. Since the infancy of blockchain outside of the cryptocurrency world, basic traceability has been the largest use case implemented globally. And that has led to thousands of projects across the globe as proof of concept or a bit more to demonstrate provenance as a use case or provenance-related use cases as a viable problem for blockchain to resolve. Though this has been the longest served use case, there are challenges. On a broad sense, number one is being data. On a broad sense, data may include pretty much everything we talk about, but I here refer to two aspects. One, the disparate systems that hold the data, and two, the lack of data itself. For example, in a meat supply, a cattle meat supply, the data related to why the cattle was reared may be the easiest information to pass. However, to identify its health record, its immunization record, it may only exist on paper or even may not exist at all. Standards. Even if the data is available and communicable digitally, the standard on which the data to be communicated and how you make it relevant, how it can be measured in a consistent fashion. So globally, we compare apples to apples and not to oranges. Then the visibility part. And when data is not available or when the good is on the move, there is often a long blind spot. In certain cases, when the cattle is moved from the ranch to the slaughterhouse, and the tracking information supply doesn't exist. Now, in a case of an intermediate good that is being transported across nations, there is no tracking involved oftentimes without IoT. But then the goods appear after 3 days. Now, there is no guarantee what has happened in the interim. So visibility is critical. Custodial information, especially for high-value produce and how it passes through, it's critical to ensure regulatory concerns of money laundering and any fraud in global trade, as well as avoiding human exploitation come into play. As a good moves its physical location, its ownership and custody will often change. It is critical to know and show accurate provenance throughout. Transparency, at the end, is fundamentally due to lack of trust, or the vice versa. Because there is no trust, there is no transparency. It's a fundamental problem of all of these things. As we know, blockchain continues to address transparency, and it continues to provide assurance on the reliability of the data by giving a distributed ledger representation of the data. But it's going to boil down to collecting the data in a very meaningful way. A typical product process, for example, let's say there is a mining operation, mining some minerals and metals, process them, pre-manufacture them, ship them, and it goes to a warehouse and it gets into branding before the consumption happens. And depending upon how you want to define that, you can use an analogy of upstream or downstream. And you can look at the whole thing very similar to a cattle and meat process. Cattle is being conceived. You need to know why it's conceived, who are its parents, and it grows up in what form, what is being fed to it, what kind of immunizations occur. All of this has to go on the blockchain as it happens. And then it moves to slaughterhouse. How did it get moved? What kind of truck? And when it's in the slaughterhouse, how was it slaughtered? Especially if you're going to take care of certain halal certification needs. Then how the meat is cut and processed, and then packaged and shipped. At each point, the information has to be captured. So fundamentally, if you just take provenance as a problem and put a value chain in which from the core product, core ingredient, or the raw ingredient begins, and define every process it goes through and put a tracing mechanism at each stage and get all relevant data specific to that particular process or processes, capture it, and store it on blockchain with everybody in the process consenting to it being the right data. There are various industry-specific uses. Now in life sciences, everything boils down to the source, the authenticity, and the processing details of it. Natural resources, even more sensitive. Source of mining, country of processing. Are your diamonds blood diamonds? Or are they clean enough to be used? Those are the questions to be asked. Various inspection and quality certificates need to be tracked and brought in at each level. Food safety will probably continue to be the world's largest and number one business application. There are several cases of tracking and assuring the quality of a product, that the wine I'm having is from Burgundy, not from somewhere else. The grapes were grown there. Would blockchain be able to solve it? Definitely. But would we be able to get the sufficient information to assure the consumers? Yes, that's a critical point. So there are various applications to assure people of the nature of where a good was produced, where it was processed, where it was packaged, and how the whole processes happen. And these are effectively the provenance use cases. I have some real life examples. And as a disclosure, I'm not associated with any of these examples I'm putting here. So one of the most recent announcements was from Scotland, when 6 of the largest farmers there realized the value of certifying the oats as gluten-free. Now, by nature, oats are considered gluten-free, but gluten exists because of different products that arrive in the shelf do not have particularly clean oats in that. Now, this group from Aberdeenshire recognized by getting that information in a combined way from post-harvest to milling facilities, and to ensure that it has not been contaminated by the gluten from any of the other cereal grains. It's one of the most fabulous examples, I would think. It touches many people's lives. Earlier in the year was a gold trade. This was within Canada. By trade in markets, they were the enablers. But fundamentally, it was gold being sold by Agnico Eagle that sold 5,000 ounces of its gold to the Bank of Montreal. They effectively captured, authenticated, communicated the origin of the metal, all the provenance and the supply chain data, and the transfer of ownership credits. They were able to do the economic segregation for the first time in the precious metal chain. One of the earliest examples would be a tea tracking that was done in Japan. The Fuji Marumu was done by VeChain, and they considered a success. Not that we have seen that much in this market, but definitely one of the earliest examples of production grade tracking. And there are many Singapore-based companies have done the same too. Benefits, I'm going to talk about business benefits. I'm not going to talk about the technology implications, which I think people understand. Fundamentally, the chain of custody is proven in this. That's the most important thing. Chain of custody is critical in many business processes, many goods transaction, but the consumers will start to demand that too. An efficient audit process. This is another problem today in the world. If somebody claims that this went through a particular process in a specific place, and if there is no plausible way to audit it, the whole purpose is defeated. From a business point of view, consumer confidence will drive their business price points. The price points they can demand, definitely the worst case, for example. They hope that by able to prove and gain customer confidence about the gluten-freeness of their oats, they'll be able to demand higher price. The fourth one, I'm talking about the right product to the right customer. Now, this means one of the other problems that you produce or a medical medicine that is meant for country A, if it ends up in country B, and it affects in different ways. For example, a specific nasal spray I use costs X dollars in Singapore, but it's X by 2 in Malaysia, and X by 5 in a country like India. And if it is sold at a lower price to the physicians in India, but it ends up in Singapore in a black market, everybody loses out. And finally, authenticity of everything that we are talking about. Fundamentally, by bringing in transparency, by using technology like blockchain and IoT, and by proving provenance in a substantial way, everybody stands to benefit. I hope this short video was of some help to you and created some interest in you, and I wish you all the best.